Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. All right, we're working our way through Genesis. We're chapter 29 and chapter 30 is kind of where we're at. We're talking about the birth of the children of Jacob, which become the 12 tribes of Israel and become the nation of Israel that we talk about in the rest of the Old Testament and even up to the life of Christ. And so that's going to continue to be our focus. We're going to try and get through that. And then like I kind of was making a joke about, hopefully today too, we'll talk about how the Lord blessed Jacob, not only with the children, which are certainly a blessing, but also through increasing his worldly prosperity and wealth to a certain extent. And it's kind of one of those places in the Old Testament where you read it and you're like, what in the world is being said here? So we're going to try and tackle that and look at what I think's going on there as well. So we had been talking about Jacob having kids, and we have the chart up here where Jacob first is married to Leah, and the Lord did that so that Judah, Zebulun, Issachar, Levi, Simeon, and Reuben would all be born of Leah. But he really wanted to marry Rachel, who's down here in the pink, and that was the one that he loved the most. And we talked about how marrying more than one wife, let alone if they are sisters, is not necessarily a good thing. Okay, even that's not quite strong enough. Don't do it. Okay? In addition to that, where we were just leaving off is chapter 30. I'm going to start reading at verse 1, and I'm going to read through verse 24. So I know that's a long bit, but we're going to read that whole section there, 30, verse 1 through 24. When Rachel saw that she bore Jacob no children, she envied her sister. She said to Jacob, "Give me children, or I should die." Jacob's anger was kindled against Rachel, and he said, "Am I in the place of God, who has withheld from you the fruit of the womb?" Then she said, "Here's my servant Bilhah. Go into her, so that she may give birth on my behalf, that I even may have children through her." So she gave him her servant Bilhah as a wife, and Jacob went into her. And Bilhah conceived and bore Jacob a son. Then Rachel said, "God has judged me and has heard my voice and given me a son." Therefore she called his name Dan. Rachel's servant Bilhah conceived again and bore Jacob a second son. Then Rachel said, "With mighty wrestlings I have wrestled with my sister and have prevailed." She called his name Naphtali. Now we're going to pause for a second. You see in that verse where the challenge in Jacob's family came. Who's Rachel wrestling with? Leah, her sister. You see why this is a problem? Okay, verse 9. When Leah saw that she had ceased bearing children, she took her servant Zilpah and gave her to Jacob as a wife. Then Leah's servant Zilpah bore Jacob a son. And Leah said, "Good fortune has come," so she called his name Gad. Leah's servant Zilpah bore Jacob a second son. And Leah said, "Happy am I, for women have called me happy." So she called his name Asher. In the days of wheat harvest, Reuben went and found mandrakes in the field and brought them to his mother Leah. Then Rachel said to Leah, "Please give me some of your son's mandrakes." What's that? What are mandrakes? I was afraid someone would ask. Keep that filed away. Please give me some of your son's mandrakes. Verse 15. But she said to her, "Is it a small matter that you have taken away my husband? Would you take away my son's mandrakes also?" Rachel said, "Then he may lie with you tonight in exchange for your son's mandrakes." When Jacob came from the field in the evening, Leah went out to meet him and said, "You must come in to me, for I have hired you with my son's mandrakes." So he lay with her that night, and God listened to Leah, and she conceived and bore Jacob a fifth son. Leah said, God has given me my wages because God has given me my wages because I gave my servant to my husband. So she called his name Issachar. And Leah conceived again, and she bore Jacob a sixth son. Then Leah said, God has endowed me with good endowment. Now my husband will honor me because I have borne him 6 sons. So she called his name Zebulun. Afterward she bore a daughter and called her name Dinah. Then God remembered Rachel, and God listened to her and opened her womb. She conceived and bore a son and said, God has taken away my reproach. And she called his name Joseph, saying, May the Lord add to me another son. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. All right, so we're going to come back and answer that mandrake question, but I want you to see the complexity that exists within this particular family because Jacob has 4 wives, 2 of whom are sisters, and the other 2 who are servants of those sisters. Do you see the complexity of it? Rachel's mad, and she is striving against her sister. She's envious, and she doesn't understand why her sister's having all these kids, and she isn't. And she knows that the problem isn't Jacob in this instance, doesn't she? How? Because Leah's having the children. And that makes her angry at Leah and introduces conflict within the family. Okay? And that leads to these next 2 wives that we have. We have Bilhah, who bears Dan and Naphtali, and we have Zilpah, who bears Asher and Gad. And just a quick note on the word Asher. Does anybody know what Asher means? It means happy or blessed. Just like we talked about in the sermon for this morning, the name Asher is that same word. It's just the Hebrew version, not the Greek version. Okay? So you see the complexity that's added here. And then, on top of that, in verse 14, in the days of wheat harvest, Reuben went and found mandrakes in the field and brought them to his mother, Leah. Now the question was, what are mandrakes? Because thanks to J.K. Rowling, when you hear mandrakes, what do you think? Like a turnip that screams at Hogwarts, the magic college or whatever it is. Okay? And the truth is, we don't know exactly what this word in the Hebrew that we translate mandrakes means. It could be turnips, it could be tomatoes. There's several possibilities. In the version of the Bible that we recorded for our radio station to play, they call them love apples, which when you start to read it in context and you're talking about Leah hiring her husband with love apples, it gets to be a little funny just to read it. So when you hear me read that one on the radio, know that I had to pause several times and giggle. We don't know for sure what mandrakes are. All of those possibilities are out there, but they're some kind of food. And what the issue is here is Reuben finds this food, and he picks it, and he brings it to his mom, Leah. And what does Rachel want? She wants the food. What does Leah want? Yeah, Jacob, right? And you even see the complexity now that's added in when one wife hires a night with her husband from the other wife by giving her food. In a sense, they're treating their husband like a male prostitute in a way. Is that a good way to operate your family? No. No. Now, what's amazing about it is, through this, which is a mess, what is God doing? We have all these people who are born, sons. And these sons are going to have additional children, particularly as they head down into Egypt. They're going to multiply greatly in their number. So that when they leave Egypt, and you see this red line here, this red line is where they go down into Egypt. Okay? So you see in the bigger chart here, 1661 is when they head down into Egypt, and they're going to be down there till 1446. Okay? And so we have 215 years, and this is according to St. Paul, as well as what's recorded for us in Genesis. 215 years, they're going to go from 70 people that go down into Egypt to hundreds of thousands of people who leave Egypt. God is doing this as they themselves confess, right? What did Jacob say when Rachel said, I want kids? Jacob confessed, who opens and closes wombs? God. And God is opening these wombs to create all of these children that will create the next generation, and they'll multiply greatly so that all those people will leave Egypt 200 some years later. Okay? Now, I'm going through all the birth of the kids fairly quickly, I think. Are there any other questions about them? Their names mean what their mothers said when they were born. The ones that are important to us, as you see on this chart here, are Judah. And Judah, his name, he's right here. He's in green. He's still born of Leah, but he's in green because he's in the lineage of Christ. And on my chart, I've got all the people who are ancestors of Jesus in green. But you also have up here Levi. And Levi is important because that's also part of how we know how long they were in Egypt. And it's through Levi that both Moses, here, I'm trying to get the laser pointer on the right place, Moses and Aaron eventually are born. Aaron is the first high priest. Moses is the prophet prefiguring Christ, leading the people of Israel out of slavery and to the promised land, particularly important through the Red Sea, foreshadowing baptism, and also through whom manna feed the children of Israel in the wilderness, bread from heaven, foreshadowing the Lord's Supper, and who delivers the word from God, which is the same word that we still preach and teach today. So you see, all of that is prefigured in Moses, who also then we have through the person of Levi going forward. Now also important down here we have Joseph, who you all know had the Technicolor Dreamcoat, and is through whom they're going to be set up to multiply greatly in Egypt going forward. Now, when we get a little further, we'll talk about what's happening in Egypt at this time, and the famine that's going on that leads them down into Egypt, which also in Egypt caused, you see it down here below, it's called an intermediate period in Egyptian chronology, where a large number of Semitic-speaking people end up down in Egypt and establish their own kingdom. You see down here as well, the Hyksos, okay? And so we'll talk about all that a little bit later. But all of what I'm saying is all this history matches. Everything makes sense historically, which is exactly what we would expect should the Bible be true. And I hate to give away the end of the story. Is the Bible true? Yes. Absolutely. Okay? And so it's important to see all of that happening as well. So are there any questions about the birth of these, so far 11, but eventually 12 men before we move in to the next bit? Semitic speaking, what's, yeah? Semitic. So, Semitic is a word that is about a particular group of people who speak a particular language set. That the one that we're familiar with as Christians is Hebrew, but other Semitic languages exist like Aramaic, and really I think Arabic falls into that category. And the reason we call them Semitic is because we know through the scripture, particularly about the Hebrews, that they are descended from Shem. And so these other groups of people that speak the same sort of language also are descended from Shem after the flood with Noah and his ark. Okay, and so even now today in the news, you hear all the time about people who are anti-Semitic. Okay, and today that means that they are against the Jews, but traditionally the word Semitic is much more broad than just the Jews. It has all those other people in mind as well. Okay, yeah, Wayne.
You had said that 70 go into Egypt.
Yes.
Were those mainly Jacob's offspring?
70 go into Egypt, were they mainly Jacob's offspring. And if you want to look ahead on your own, you'll see at the end of Genesis, make sure I see where it is here. It tells us where they all go down into Egypt, how many there were. There is Jacob. There are his wives who are still alive. There are his 12 children who are still alive, sons, and several daughters, and several grandchildren. And so all of those add up to be those, I want to say 72 people. And I was trying to find it here real quick because I didn't have that verse written down, but it is in chapter 47 or after. And someone will find it here while we keep on talking, but it has that verse in there and talks specifically about how many go down into Egypt. Chapter 46? Oh, it's in chapter 46. I'm wrong. There we go. Okay, chapter 46. There you go. Starting in verse 8, you have all these descendants, and you see how many there are in each branch of the family. And then in verse 26, they were 70, the persons who go down into Egypt. Perfect. Always good to have another pastor who's got the right place in their head. Okay. Does that answer, Wayne? Okay. Okay. Now I want to talk about what's about to happen here in the rest of chapter 30. So I'm going to read verse 25 through 43 and follow along here, and now you'll see this interesting thing that happens. Okay? You don't have this sheet because I didn't think just one sheet with this on there was worthwhile. So here we have chapter 30, verses 25, and we're gonna read a lot here. So follow along. As soon as Rachel had borne Joseph, Jacob said to Laban, "Send me away that I may go to my own country. Give me my wives and my children, for whom I have served you, that I may go, for you know the service I have given you." But Laban said to him, "If I have found favor in your sight, I have learned by divination that the Lord has blessed me because of you." What's divination, real quick? Telling the future, getting answers from a god through weird means, right? So the Romans did it by the priest would kill the animal, pull out the guts, and throw them on the ground, and whichever organs were on top, he used that to tell the future, okay? Or another way that people still do today would be crystal balls or Ouija boards. All these sorts of things are divination. Are they good? No, avoid them. They're bad. They're very bad. They open the door to not good things. What does that tell us a little bit about Laban? I would say it this way, not completely devoted to the one true God. Okay. That the Lord has blessed me because of you. Name your wages and I will give it. Verse 29, Jacob said to him, "You yourself know how I have served you and how your livestock has fared with me. For you had little before I came, and it has increased abundantly, and the Lord has blessed you wherever I turned. But now, when shall I provide for my own household also?" He said, "What shall I give you?" Jacob said, "You shall not give me anything if you will do this for me. I will again pasture your flock and keep it. Let me pass through all your flocks today, removing from it every speckled and spotted sheep and every black lamb, and the spotted and speckled among the goats, and they shall be my wages. So my honesty will answer for me later when you come to look into my wages with you. Every one that is not speckled and spotted amongst the goats and black among the lambs, if found with me, shall be counted stolen." Laban said, "Good, let it be as you have said." But that day Laban removed the male goats that were striped and spotted, and all the female goats that were speckled and spotted, every one that had white on it, and every lamb that was black, and put them in the charge of his sons. And he set a distance of 3 days' journey between himself and Jacob. And Jacob pastured the rest of Laban's flock. Then Jacob took fresh sticks of poplar and almond and plane trees and peeled white streaks in them, exposing the white of the sticks. He set the sticks that he had peeled in front of the flocks in the troughs, that is, the watering places where the flocks came to drink. And since they bred when they came to drink, the flocks bred in front of the sticks, and so the flocks brought forth striped, speckled, and spotted. Say that 3 times fast. And Jacob separated the lambs and set the faces of the flocks toward the striped and all the black in the flock of Laban. He put his own droves apart and did not put them with Laban's flock. Whenever the stronger of the flock were breeding, Jacob would lay the sticks in the troughs before the eyes of the flock, that they might breed among the sticks, but for the feebler of the flock he would not lay them there. So the feebler would be Laban's, and the stronger Jacob's. Thus The man increased greatly and had large flocks, female servants and male servants, and camels and donkeys. Whew. Okay, perfectly clear, right? What's the deal, first off? Jacob has worked for 14 years in order to pay what he owed to marry Leah and Rachel. The deal was 7 years for Rachel, and he got Leah instead. And then work 7 more years, and you can marry Rachel also. So he married Rachel, and then worked for 7 years. So he has worked the total time required to have these children. To have these wives. And in that time frame, he had the children. Okay? Now the question is, what does he do? He says to his father-in-law Laban, all right, I paid what I owe. I'm going to go home with my family. And Laban says, no, keep on working here for me. Jacob says, well, what are you going to pay me? Laban says, well, what do you want? Jacob says, I'll take all of the, I'm just going to say broadly, different colored sheep and goats. Now, you all know sheep and goats. I know we always have in our mind with sheep that they are white, but is that the case across the board? No, there's brown, there's black, there's white, there's different colors. Same with goats. You have some that are speckled, some that are solid. Okay? Jacob says, my wages will be part of the flock that I graze, that I'm a shepherd for, and the way that will tell mine from yours is I'll take all the speckled ones, all the different colored ones, and you take all the plain colored ones. And in that way, we won't be able to accuse each other of stealing. Because how do you tell whose sheep is whose? Yeah, what do they look like? Okay? That's Jacob's plan. Now, this is not on the card, but when you do business with family, make sure you have a very clear and easy to understand plan just like this. If you borrow money from family or anything like that, have a good plan so that you don't have a fight later that divides the family. Okay? This is very smart on Jacob's part. Laban's still going to cheat and not treat him fairly. We'll see that in a minute. But do make sure you have that plan that's clear that you can follow when you do dealings with your family. Okay? That's not what the text is saying. It's implying it, and that's just good practical advice. So that's the plan Jacob agrees to. I'll keep on grazing the flocks, but my payment will be the differently colored ones, and that's a good way for us to keep them separate. Now, if that's the agreement, every good businessman is going to do what? Do you want to get paid more or less at your job? More. So are you going to try and arrange things by your own means to get paid more? You do, right? So during college, I worked at a place that had a time clock, right? And you got paid by the quarter hour, which meant you could sign out 7 minutes and 29 seconds before your shift ended and still get paid for those 7 minutes and 29 seconds. Anybody else ever worked with a time clock like that? Okay, right? So what do? You check out 7 minutes and 29 seconds earlier, so you get those 7 minutes and 29 seconds to yourself, but you're still getting paid for them. And people do this. That's why they have to have rules like that. Okay? Jacob is thinking the same way. He wants to get paid more. And his payment is the different colored sheep. And so he says to himself, "Self, how can I maximize my income?" Now, here's the weird part. He comes up with, "I'll carve poplar sticks and I'll put them in the water troughs while the sheep and the goats are breeding. And in that way, the different colors on the poplar sticks will make the sheep that are born different colored, and thereby my wages." Now, us modern people read that, and what do we think? What? That doesn't make any sense, right? And it's because we've all had biology class. And what did you learn in biology class? Genetics, right? Okay, so the easy one. I have blue eyes. My wife has brown eyes. 2 of our kids have blue eyes, and 2 of our kids have brown eyes. And I think the one that's recessive is the blue eyes. You got to end up with 2 genes from your parents, 1 from each, that are blue eyes to end up with blue eyes. So Elizabeth's half blue and half brown, and I'm all blue. And thereby we have 2 kids with blue eyes and 2 kids with brown eyes. And the same thing is true with sheep and goats and the color of their fur, wool, the pigmentation, okay? So to us this sounds ridiculous. So why is it here? And it's in the Bible. Is the Bible true? Yes. So what's happening is really happening. Jacob is really doing this with the sticks. Now, what does he think? There's several theories that I, in my research for today, found. There are some who say there's the magic theory, that these sticks were folk magic. Okay? I don't necessarily think that. There's the naturalistic breeder theory, that the sticks released pheromones that caused goats to breed when Jacob wanted them to. And I read that and I think, so Jacob knew about pheromones? And I don't think that that's the case either. I do think Jacob thought this was a really good idea, but I don't think that Jacob is actually the one who's causing his wages to increase. I think this bottom one. Who's the one who's at work? God. God is working to increase Jacob's wages, to make Jacob a wealthy man. Now, why is all this in there then? Here's what I think. Okay, and we'll have to read the rest of the verses next week, so we're almost out of time. Since we got into this, I want to start. This is on the left, the Hebrew, okay, and the big one here in the middle, this is the name Laban. And if you put in the Hebrew vowels, which look like that, it says Laban. Okay? Underneath that, this word is Libneh. Notice the consonants, the first 3 consonants, do these 3 letters here look the same as these ones here? Yes, because they are the same, but if you change the vowels, you put a dot there, and, you can hardly see it, the dots down there, this is the word for poplar tree. And in both cases, they're related to the word white. The name Laban means white. Why is a poplar tree called Libnah? Because when you take off the bark of a poplar tree, what color is the wood? White. This is why, too, in many of our homes, the wood that we use for the trim is actually poplar, because it kind of looks like oak, but it's much whiter and it's cheaper. Poplar. You see, these are the same words. And Hebrew loves things like this. Laban stole all of the speckled sheep to try and make it so that Jacob would have to work for free. Jacob cut down a bunch of sticks that had the same name as his father-in-law and put them around the troughs to kind of mock him in this, is it a tongue twister? That's not the right word. Play on words. All right, fine, Laban, I'll put the libnah around here, and then you won't get your sheep, and I'll get them. And behind this, God is the one doing the work. Now, how do I defend that position that God is the one who's causing this? If you look forward in chapter 31, the verses we haven't read yet, it's what it says. Verse 42, for example. If the God of my father, the God of Abraham, and the fear of Isaac had not been on my side, surely now you would have sent me away empty-handed. But God saw my affliction and the labor of my hands and rebuked you last night. And in fact, if you read the rest of chapter 31, which is what we'll start with next time, you'll see God is the one working through the birthing process to bless Jacob, which matches what we were talking about before. Jacob is blessed because he has 12 sons. How are sons born? Well, through these wives. Through birthing, the Lord blessed Jacob's family. How about his wealth? Same thing, except now we're not talking about people, we're talking about sheep and goats. And the Lord is blessing Jacob as they multiply as well and are able to be counted in his possession because of their appearance. In both cases, God is blessing Jacob, and we have this whole business with the poplar sticks. It's kind of a play on words in Hebrew. And do people try and do things to make more money all the time? Do they always work? If you are blessed, if you have a lot of wealth, why is it? We like to think it's because we carved the poplar sticks the right way, but really, it's because what? God blessed you. And you need to keep that part in mind, because if that's the truth, the question then that follows is, why has God blessed you? So that you also can be a blessing to the people around you. Does that make sense? Okay? That's not, our temptation is to not do that. Is to just let the blessing be for us and not the people around us. All right, we're over time, so we'll have to pick up there. If you have a question, write it down. We'll start with that next week, and then we'll keep plugging away through Genesis. And we're moving a little bit quicker now because the stories are a little bit longer. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you his peace. Amen.